Okay, thank you. If as you arrive, you could turn your mics off, that would be super. Okay, thank you everybody for joining this evening. It's that first Monday evening after the clocks go back, driving home in the dark. Bit of a shock to the system every year, isn't it? It's quite bizarre how it takes us all by surprise. But this evening, thank you ever so much for taking the time to join online. The idea is that I will present to you the way that we support, and that keeps clicking on every time I do the meeting options. I'll present to you this evening the career support that we offer at MV over the next 18 months. And I did say to students last week when I launched this with them, it is a very short 2 years at MV. I know some of you may have had young people come through our college already in the past, but it definitely does go very quickly. And it is, in fact, 18 months until they will be leaving us. And yes, they're going to achieve their subjects, get their qualifications, but actually a really important part of our role at MV is that we will be supporting them so that their next destinations are well prepared and they feel well equipped for those next stages. So my first slide here, I will take you through several slides this evening. And there will be the opportunity for you to ask me questions. Do feel free to drop any questions at any time in the chat, and I will look at those intermittently and then go through all of them at the end. But basically, this first slide kind of shows you some of the partners that we work with. Obviously, and I'll show you in a second, a large proportion of MV students do go on to university. So UCAS is an important part of the process. And I will do another parents information session on how UCAS works in particular at the end of the summer term. But then here you'll also have received your Unifrog parent invite. So we are one of the first schools in the UK that started working with Unifrog. I'm a Unifrog champion. I don't work for them. I don't get paid for them, but I do an awful lot of work with them. I'm a speaker at their conferences. I do quite a lot of teacher training across the UK. And as a consequence, we're heavily involved with the development of that platform. And then we've got some other organisations you might recognise yourself. So LinkedIn is a very important part of our careers programme. We make sure that students have built a LinkedIn profile before they leave us. We've got a mentoring programme we work with called Zero Gravity. And then our careers programme is supported by LEBC for our careers advisors and various other organisations that will pop up during this presentation. So really, and you may recognise a few faces here, it's all about where are they going next after they leave us, and that is the whole point of careers education. So we did celebrate our 10 years of MV in 2021, and it was also our first year post-COVID that we could have our alumni event again. So this is just, I just thought I'd put this slide up. This is just a very small snapshot of some of the young people and what they've gone on to do after leaving MV. There's a whole selection of careers represented here. There's young people who are working for well-known organisations, so HSBC, Disney, working for the NHS, obviously there's doctors and nurses. And then there are students who are still at university. So Taylor's over in the States there. There are 2 vets listed. We've got computer science, cybersecurity students there, future architects, interior designers, and even people on there who have gone on to set up their own businesses. So that goes all the way back to I think the oldest on that screen left in 2011. So it's very much an important part of our careers programme at MV. And actually on Wednesday, we will be launching the difference between degree apprenticeships and degrees through university. And it's actually 3 former students coming in to do that who are completing degree apprenticeships themselves, 2 in business and 1 law to train to be a solicitor. So I do keep, I am incredibly lucky that they keep in touch, but I do keep in close contact with former students. LinkedIn is an incredibly powerful tool which we use, and they are more than willing to support with our careers programme. What I find incredibly powerful is these are young people that went to the same education system, maybe the same secondary schools, have been brought up in the same area, and they can really share their experiences. of future career paths. And really, the most important thing is to share that there's no set way of doing things. That's an important foundation of our kind of mantra with careers at MV. And it is really normal to not know what you want to do. So some of them will, I mean, at the careers, just a little quick anecdote, at the careers event with the alumni, there was somebody who left in 2011 who is a very successful buyer for Green Core, and a paramedic came along, and he was actually, I think I want to retrain and be a paramedic. So he's like sort of early 30s. And that was really nice to see that actually the alumni were even thinking about how their career paths would change. But we know that as adults, that it's a very different world of work from if you're sort of my generation of thinking that you might end up working for the same company or doing the same job role for all of your life. That's certainly not going to be the case with our children. Okay, so the one thing I wanted to highlight immediately, which is an important part of the support we'll give, is that life after MV might have always been, oh, am I going to go into university? Am I going to do an apprenticeship? Am I going to go straight into work? But as you'll see from this slide, there's been a significant rise in the number of leavers who would like to take a gap year. And a gap year is an interesting concept. I think a lot of this rise of the gap year has been because they're very unsure what they would like to do. And I don't really want to keep harping back to the pandemic, but there is no doubt about it that careers education has changed significantly since the pandemic in making sure, actually, it's almost like they've had time to really think, what do they want to do? I know that this age group were a bit younger, but they don't want to rush into decisions. I think ourselves, a lot of us have kind of reflected as well in terms of our career paths with the pandemic. So I have had the largest number, getting on for 20% of the cohort who left last summer. I'll just click onto this slide actually. So you'll see there that 17% of students who left in the summer are actually on a gap year. That is significant. That used to be 5% before the pandemic. So what are they doing while they're on these gap years? It's quite interesting, really. I'm running a support session for them next Monday evening if they still are unsure what they want to do. Many have got their university place and they applied with us. So that university would have normally been 70%, let's say, but a 10% have decided that they want to go the following year and they'll go next September. And then many are still in the process of applying for apprenticeships, but a significant amount have just needed to take some time to decide what they want to do. And that has changed our careers programme because we're providing more support once they've left. So the UniFrog platform allows MV students to log on. That's a perk for us until they're 25. As long as they keep active on it at least once a year, their account will stay open. We also have got our LEBC careers advisors who will support, if they've been at MV, will support students. And I've got one who's on a gap year at the minute, who's having a mock interview tomorrow, coming back into the building. And that is as they were unsure what they wanted to do when they were at MV. And then some young people are doing that traditional gap year, of course, where they are earning some money and going travelling and want to see a bit of the world. And, you know, interrailing is still very popular, and travelling across Europe and travelling further afield as well. So maybe going off, got one student who's going off to do a ski season in Canada. She's been working very hard, and then she is going to do a summer season working as a holiday rep and then go to university in the September, but just feels that needs that little breather from the rigour of education. So I just think those statistics are quite interesting there as well because they've changed. So I've been managing the careers programme at MV since 2016. So it hasn't always been part of my job as a senior leader. But basically, it always used to be about 85 to 90% that went to university. Now, of course, degree apprenticeships, and you may not be familiar with that, and I'll try and give you as much info as I can this evening and send out other info, but degree apprenticeships have changed that direction because young people in many fields, and it will be more and more, can actually gain that graduate qualification while they work, and that's becoming very attractive. especially to our young people that live and work around the Melton area. They do like a bit of money in their pocket, and very sensibly considering the cost of university, as are we as parents. So that's shifted that. But then also there's been a real rise in being able to do employment with training. So companies are putting far more training on an early careers route. So even if it's not an apprenticeship, and there has been a small proportion of since the pandemic of our students setting up their own businesses after leaving, whether that's quite often IT and creative based, maybe graphic design, and probably having family contacts already. So I just think that's interesting to show sort of the picture at the minute, which does reflect a typical market town destinations. They're the sorts of unis that our students go to. So the Russell Group unis are obviously the ones that they're aspiring to go to if they feel that that is a particular profession where they want to have a degree from a prestigious university. So for example, Birmingham's very popular, Newcastle's very popular, Leeds. Obviously, we have a couple every year that apply to. So we've got 2 at Oxford and 1 at Cambridge from last year. The London universities, that really does come down to preference, but students do like to go to London if they've got a particular university that they're interested in. And then also, obviously, we've got Loughborough and Nottingham and Leicester on our doorstep. Even though Loughborough and Leicester aren't classed as Russell Group, they're seen as the original red brick universities and still incredibly sought after. And I think I will talk to the young people about Russell Group unis. They're not the be all and end all. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a group of universities who are actually incredibly successful in completing research and selling research. And sometimes as an undergraduate, you don't get as much access to the level of teaching that you might think you're going to get. It's quite a lot of PhD teaching, but there's no doubt about it that the Russell Group unis do have an incredible amount of career support. And it is having that university on your CV, of course, which still we do live in quite an elitist society in the UK. So it's seen in that way. But universities that we have on our doorstep are incredible. So I am a big advocate for Nottingham Trent, for Lincoln Uni, Northampton in terms of paramedic science is an incredible. Coventry in terms of physiotherapy. There are all sorts of universities that are sort of an hour away that are absolutely incredible, and we really do make sure that we're advising the universities that suit the individual and not just saying that it has to be Russell Group. Okay, so as I say, do feel free to drop any questions as you go. And then on the other side, I think it's important to show that with this growth of apprenticeships, who are MV students going off and working for? So the accountancy world has a bit of an equivalent in terms of the prestige companies that young people want to apply for. And I am then, I will come to that question in a second, but the answer is going to be yes. But we do see that young people want to work for the likes of KPMG, PwC, Deloitte, EY. Cooper Parry is an incredible accountancy firm. And then there is a large number of engineering firms that are taking on degree apprentices, and even people like Dyson and Jaguar Land Rover will take them all the way to master's level. So that's a level 7 degree apprentice. Caterpillar, JCB, John Deere. I've got young people all on engineering related apprenticeships there. And then the growth of the business, I've just put up 2 logos there, but the growth of the business apprenticeships is massive. And the reality is they sometimes get a better deal for their degree. So when they go off to somewhere like Sandworth Brothers on our doorstep, they actually get a chartered management qualification through their degree, and they study for 4 days a month at Sheffield Hallam University. So I've had 3 students, 1 that's gone through already, and 2 students currently working for Sandworths on that programme. Every degree apprenticeship programme does vary, and I'm at the minute working with UCAS on a pilot study to see how they can change the application process. I don't think that's going to happen before our current year 12 apply personally. It might be a couple of years down the process, but apprenticeship applications are far more complex because you apply for every single one individually as if you are applying for a job. So we train up the students so that they can tailor their CV to match that particular company and their particular job requirements. So I will just come to that question in the chat. So we really do like to make sure that students are accessing the support at MV while they're with us. So if they know the course that they want to apply for, and some you can't defer, for example, vet med, medicine, Oxbridge, you can't do a deferment. There are the odd exceptions with Oxford. But if they know, then it makes absolute perfect sense to get your application in. You can put on your UCAS firm that you want to go in. So what will it be for these guys? It'll be 2025, so they can put in a 2026 application. And then you can go off for your gap year and know what you're doing. And I've got lots of students doing that. What's interesting about some of them is they do change their mind. So I've got a former student coming in next Monday who has got her place already, but since she's gone off and done Camp America and some work experience, she's actually changed her mind on what she'd like to do. So that then makes that obsolete, that application. But then, of course, a lot of students are doing that gap year because they don't know what they want to do. So that is when we are offering the support once they've left, which can be tricky if they're away traveling, of course, although obviously we can do lots of things like this through Teams. But the key thing there is that if they've gone through the process and learnt how it would work while they're at MV, then actually they might be able to do it independently. My definite go-to is try and apply and defer. I will always say that 9 times out of 10, but obviously every circumstance is different. I think I like this slide. I think this is really interesting. I think the 49% of parents is a fascinating statistic. Then they, and you're welcome. And I think that it seems to be quite exciting for us of our generation to think that that option wasn't available. So I know not all of you will have gone to university, but if you wanted to have a graduate qualification, then you needed to go to university. And of course, university costs were so much lower. We didn't have to pay for our fees. We were in the era of education for free. So I think it's quite interesting that those statistics, and these are from last year, I wonder if they might have shifted even more. When it says that 3 to 6 years, that depends on the apprenticeship and it depends what level it is. But I do think it's incredibly powerful. It's a bit like after doing work experience or a placement year at university, 90% of apprentices do stay with that company afterwards. And we do want students to be ambitious, to be looking for, you know, and really shopping around for the different degree apprenticeship routes. And I keep saying degree apprenticeship, but actually there is a trend now that if you want to get in with a good company, it might, so say for example, somebody like JCB, a former student who's working for JCB actually applied for the level 4, which is the next level up after A level, and was fast tracked. So got in with the company, very tricky company to get in with, but went in at a lower level, then impressed them within the first couple of months and actually got fast tracked onto the level 6. So, but I'll talk about the levels. I think I've got a slide on that. In fact, here it is. I like, the reason I put this slide in is because what I really want to do is educate both parents and students about how important it is now to have industry experience. And I know that I will be preaching to converted with many of you here. And I know that you will work in industry, you may even work in early careers, and know how important it is when you are recruiting to have people that have got some first-hand experience. So the higher apprenticeship is this, what I was making reference to a minute ago, is the level 4 or 5. and that will progress all the way up. So level 7 is the equivalent of a master's qualification, level 6 being a degree, a BA, BSc. But then, of course, when students are going to university, I will always encourage them to look for a sandwich, an industrial placement that appears as their course, so that they actually have got not just 3 years to prove having that qualification, but what they're going to find is they're going to be up against the young people that have maybe worked for companies and got their degree. So if somebody like Samworth's is recruiting a buyer who has done their degree apprenticeship, or somebody has just got a straight business or marketing degree, and then a third person who's got that business marketing degree but has also done a placement year in industry, then suddenly there's much more of an even playing field with that industry experience. There are some company sponsored degrees. They tend to be in the accountancy field, but if students are interested in accountancy, they can actually get placements automatically every holiday, every summer. And we have had students go on and do that. There's both KPMG and PwC that offer that currently. So it's really just highlighting the importance of having work experience. And that is something I'll talk about this evening as well. Okay, so I'm not going to go into the minutiae of the detail, but I wanted to give you an overview of the timeline. So it starts tonight. Well, it started last Wednesday with young people and tonight with you. So in the autumn term, we introduce our students and parents to the Unifrog platform. So just for a bit of background, if you don't know this information from the feeder school, I am aware that many of the secondary schools are using Unifrog, but Unifrog was originally set up by a chap called Alex Kelly, and he'd been teaching. He was a history teacher, Oxford graduate, and he'd been teaching and had a sixth form tutor group, and just felt that they didn't know where to start with their searches for universities. And it is going back, so this was sort of in 2012, so there was still very much a case of A-level students going on to university. So he set up a very easy, accessible search tool with some really clever little aspects to it. Now that has grown out of all proportion. So uni in the Unifrog did originally mean university, but it really means universal now. But Alex has got this brand and he couldn't really change the name. But the idea is it's a one-stop shop for every bit of careers support. And I highly recommend that you use your parent account and you go on and have a play. You might even find a new career you're interested in. And it shows you, it's got live data for every apprenticeship that is available. So it's got those search tools. It allows students to search for different universities. So that's the kind of fundamental searching aspect. But it has got a vast know-how library with short little video clips, anything you need to know about any career, any application process, whether it's how to survive, how to manage your budget at university, how to organise a flat share when going into an apprenticeship and maybe having to move away from home, all the way to how to prepare for your Oxford application and interviews, etc. Literally, I mean, and I work with them very closely. They have thought about everything that 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-olds require. So it's really worth having a play around. So I'm encouraging students to use this between now and Christmas, and I have set them some targets. So they need to be at 40% on their Unifrog account by Christmas. They need to have completed all of the quizzes. So you might be familiar with the Myers-Briggs personality, 16 personalities. That's on there. I asked them to complete that. Then it will signpost particular careers that they may be interested in. I'm asking them to do a skills audit on themselves by Christmas. I'm asking them to start to log activities and interests that build towards a CV, and favourite some careers and subject libraries. Unifrog as a starting point is almost for them to find out what they're not interested in as much as what they are interested in, because sometimes they don't find that out for real until they're in an office doing a job and think, no, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life, which does happen through work experience as well. So their accounts are created for you to And then I'll also be showing them, they've already discovered already, but I'll be showing them how much we use Teams for our careers. So we create Teams channels for particular careers fields. Predominantly our very competitive routes are the ones we start with. So wanting to train to be a doctor, you still do have to have a degree in medicine. There are some exciting apprenticeships coming online. Not sure whether they're going to be available for 2025. But same with veterinary medicine, veterinary science, different unis call it different things. The nursing, paramedic, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, midwifery, they all still require a traditional degree route. So there's a channel for them. And then the not going to uni channel is everything for everything else, employment apprenticeships. I also introduced to them in this some of our alumni speakers. I'm going to do a session next week on degree apprenticeships and what they really are. And then we are also going to have a work experience launch. And oh yes, so Mr. Hickling, you've just put about law. We actually run a law society. So Miss Preston runs a law society, and I've got 3 former students who teams in and support with that. So a former student who's just got his training contract, and then Emily Graham is coming in on Wednesday, who is doing a law degree apprenticeship. She works for Friths, I always say that wrong. So yes, the law one is actually, rather than just a Teams channel, they're actually going to have a group, as so will the medicine and the vets as well. But those, I think the thing about the most competitive routes is they also will be the young people that will probably get onto Unifrog quite quickly as well. Then what I'll also do before the end of this winter term is start to identify which students would be interested in early applications. So Oxbridge, medicine, dentistry and vet med. And Dr. Dartnell, our new head, has launched an aim higher group for the students who have achieved higher point scores than 7.5, I think, because she is fast tracking them through some particular projects that are going to be open to everybody, but that will typically meet the profile for those early apps as well. So there's lots and lots of info that students can be accessing through Unifrog and Teams as their intro to careers this winter. I also will be highlighting to students in the autumn term that employers, yes, they're interested in their A-level results, but ultimately employers are really interested in their skills and behaviours. So when assessments in companies are done these days, as I'm sure many of you know, it's very much about knowledge, skills and behaviours now, KSBs. And I'm actually working with the East Midland Chamber of Commerce with the local skills improvement plan on what the East Midlands wants from young people. So I'm part of the board that is double checking that there's the right sort of education going on. We have lots of support for architecture. One of the young people is an architect. 2 of them on that front page are architects. So we've got lots of alumni support with architecture, and that starts with them knowing how to build their portfolio for interview. So that's really important. But I like to think that whatever the field is they're interested in, we'll have lots of information and support. And I will talk about the alumni mentoring that will start in the spring term. Okay, so kickstarting careers after tonight and Wednesday is going to be Green Careers Week. This is something that the government is putting quite a lot of money into. This is only the 2nd one, so it started last year, and there is going to be various events going on. I'm going to email you as parents tomorrow and share with students what the programme is. But next Wednesday, so that's the 8th, there are going to be no lessons running on the afternoon. So on Wednesday afternoon, it's a compulsory Green Careers event for all Year 12s. So the British Geological Survey, who are just down the road at Keyworth, Kegworth, I mean, don't I? Keyworth, always get those 2 mixed up. They have kindly offered to run 4 bespoke workshops to meet the demands of green careers. Now, we know that the green agenda is massive, and if you work for large companies yourself, you might even have now a green agenda, green targets that have been set. And young people need to realise that it doesn't matter what route they go into, even if it is something like teaching or law, or what might not be obviously appear to be manufacturing or logistics, then the green agenda is absolutely massive and needs to be at the forefront. So we're going to have all sorts of events going on, which may be that they appear in their lessons. It will depend what they're doing. So students that do A-level biology, geography, BTEC engineering, economics and business, there are various talks going on actually in their lessons. And I have got Samworth Brothers coming in, and they are hosting a stand about all the different careers and why the green agenda is so important in the food industry. And then obviously there's going to be the workshops for everybody on the Wednesday afternoon. If students aren't timetabled for one of those talks and they have an independent study session, they can go along and join that class. If they are going to be looking at a particular talk and they're not available, then there'll be a Teams recording. So they're all on Teams apart from the engineering one, and then the 2 engineering speakers are going to be available at break and lunchtime. So just to answer the question about getting into teaching, of course, this is our area of expertise because we are teachers, and actually our Nova School Trust does have a skit. Teaching is very interesting because we still do have to have a degree. I am a big believer that if young people think they want to be a secondary school teacher, then they really have got to make sure that they are loving their subject and they're going to go on and do a specialist degree. If they want to do primary, it is really important that they've got national curriculum A-level subjects. But still they can do a PGCE. So yeah, we are, I mean, obviously that's our field of expertise for how to get into teaching. And of course there is a growth of, once you do have your degree, you can get paid to train to be a teacher. It's an incredible amount of money that they get. We've got one of our skits. We have a young man called Josh from the skit who is teaching he's got his history degree, got a very good history degree from Nottingham Uni, and he is training to be a history teacher with us at the minute through the Nova skit. So yeah, it's very exciting, and if they could all be teachers, that would be amazing, because we've got a massive shortage when us oldies retire. Don't know who's quite going to teach the next generation, but anyway, I will not get political, especially as there's a transcript. Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Anglia Ruskin, massive fan of that university, absolutely superb. Okay, so I wanted to show you a few of the little perks of Unifrog, because this is what autumn term is about. And I know this slide is quite small, but I just really want to encourage you to go on and have a play. So you'll see there's some of the quizzes up at the top. I think they're called, I think I did this screenshot before they then changed a bit, because they're always rebranding it. So I think it says interest quiz, personality quiz, work environments quiz, and the skills quiz now. So it's the quizzes that they'll do first of all. Loads have done this since last week when they logged on. So please do ask your youngster at home to show you if their Unifrog percentage and if they've done those quizzes. Then when they do their quizzes, it will signpost particular subjects or careers libraries or know-how libraries. So they can click on and have a really good look and start. It's so intuitive as a platform. Start doing some favourites on there. I will be talking to them about what MOOCs are, and that is the massive open online courses, and that's part of their wider independent study. I really do that after Christmas, but they can absolutely go on and have a look at that before. Unifrog are very busy running webinars for our year 13s at the minute. There might be a webinar on how to absolutely ace your personal statement, on the best answers to give for particular, I don't know, for example, there is one on law interviews, and there's an LNAT test that they have to do, and you know how to best prepare for that. And then read, watch, listen is if you're particularly interested. So you can even do that as part of revision. If you're particularly interested in subject areas, it will give little podcasts, YouTube clips, books. Believe it or not, people do still read books. Books, magazines, articles, journals that might link to that. And I'll come back to placements in a second because that's something we'll be doing after Christmas. And then they can start researching. So they will be logging their skills and activities, and I will be putting some things in their locker, but they might put some things in their locker as well. For example, if they've got music, dance, theatre, things connected to any extracurricular sporting activities, whether it is something to, I don't know, I'm thinking about when some of them have been senior scouts, got a couple that have just been off to Nepal. They've got any kind of it's a bit like the old record of achievement, but anything that they are proud of that isn't connected to being at MV and studying, they can put that in their locker and it helps them build for their CV. There's all sorts of bits and bobs that I fill in as well. So I will be filling in interactions, everything that they've done. I will be logging on their profile, the parents that have attended tonight as well, because there's actually like a parent interaction aspect on there. And then they can start shortlisting some universities, and I'll show you that as well, which basically means, but that comes up in the spring term, that basically means that they can start having a look at grade entry requirements, booking onto open days and things like that. So the UniFrog account details have already been shared with you, I hope. They were sent out with the invite to this, and Julie Shaw should have done that. But if they haven't been sent out, I will absolutely double check and they will come out tomorrow. So I was hoping that you have got that already, but I will check. So what you will have is you will log on as an MV parent and it gives you a code. So, and somebody, phew, somebody's done theirs. I just suddenly thought I was going round the twist then and we'd forgotten to do that. So please do have a double check. I know we get bombarded with emails, but if you haven't received it, then please do. I can, if you want to, I will just jot down your name and make sure that we get, or if you jot me down the email address, send that. I'll put my email address on at the end, and then you can let me know if you haven't got yours. I can sort that first thing tomorrow. Okay, spring term, probably my favourite term in terms of careers education. Year 12 start getting excited about what they might want to be doing. They have settled in at MV by then. They're getting used to their A-level and BTEC studies, and we can actually really start thinking about where things are going, because also what they will hear is year 13 starting to get university offers, year 13 starting to get apprenticeship interviews, and I will share some of those stories with them. And there's nothing more powerful than somebody just a year ahead of you telling you what you should be doing and what you should be thinking about. So when I launched UniFrog, I did that with 3 year 13 students last week. They don't want to hear from the boring old woman at the front all the time. So we've got a focus on apprenticeships in February. We've got a focus on careers as a whole in March. They are national events. We have got a big careers fair. I had over 45 different stands. And if any of you have got local organisations or companies that you work for, I'd love that to be bigger and bigger. So I had all sorts of people there last year, whether it's accountancy and engineering firms from Melton, obviously the likes of Mars and Samworth and Melton Building Society, but really just want to expose them to as much as possible. So that's going to be in March. I have got an incredible group of former students that are willing to mentor students. So I start doing a matching program. So for example, some of you have just mentioned some careers. So I've got all the vet students are being mentored by former MV students. They then have a Teams meeting online about every 3 weeks. And then as they go into year 13, they will proofread their personal statements. They will help them with applications. So I've got 3 medics that are all being mentored. But that's quite a big, this is something we've actually won an award for. But that's quite a big chore for me when they don't know what they want to do. So I do prioritise that mentoring if they've got some sort of career route in mind. If they don't have any idea and they want to go to university, I've got another mentoring, but it does have a grade entry requirement, another mentoring platform that they can get involved in, which is Zero Gravity, and I launched that to them in the spring term as well. I've also been putting out for future university students, if you as parents did not go to university at 18 straight from school, if you went later in life, it doesn't matter. But if you didn't go straight from school, either parent, then your child is classed as first generation, even if an older sibling went. There's a big drive in the UK for social mobility and try and get new generations of young people to go to university. So I've put out 3 programs that students can apply for a place. They do prioritise students from lower income backgrounds or first generation. Some of them need both. And this is the wider participation agenda that universities are very keen on, and there's some great programs they can get involved in if they meet the criteria. One of them's incredibly prestigious, and I think they have to have 7s in all of their subjects and be first generation to get onto that. But then they access various support. Seems a bit unfair that not everybody can access it, but that's the way some of these programs work. I will also, just coming back to the spring term, I will also start to offer them one-to-one careers meetings. Grace, who works for LEBC, comes in every week. She's working with year 13 and then it switches over to year 12. The early applicants, will be organising visits to Oxford and Cambridge University. They can go to either of those or both if they wish. The other early app groups will start prepping. So if you apply to do medicine, you have to do an online exam called the UCAT. So the current students will give them all the info on that. And there'll be the vet med support that kind of really kicks off in the spring term. There'll be lots of alumni support. The NHS, obviously our biggest employer in the UK, over 350 different career routes you can do with the NHS. We've got various talks going on there. And at that point, I would say start having a look at open days, taster days at universities, start having a look at the timelines of degree apprenticeships as well. And really start building their excitement about their futures and planning. And it says there that they will also be booking onto their virtual work experience and finalising their work experience plans. I will launch that in January about how they apply for that, and I will come to that shortly in this presentation. Okay, and I'm not going to go through these because time is ticking away and I want to give some time for questions and aim to finish by 7. But basically, it's really very nice on Unifrog to be able to put some criteria in. So I've just selected on here how many miles away, what sort of course, it puts in the grades, and then it shows, and then you can select which ones you're interested in. I'm not going to talk through that. It's not particularly clear on the slide, but please do, I do encourage you to have a play on that, and you can do the same for apprenticeships. And then it even shows them where, it's amazing how poor some of their geography is, it even shows them in the UK where those unis might be. Okay, on to work experience. So we have got 3 dedicated days in June, and we do think 3 days is the optimum really for them to get a real good quality experience. They also stand better chance of a company taking them on if it's just for 3 days rather than the full week. So the 17th, 18th and 19th, there will be no teaching at MV. Students will be out on work experience placements in person, or they may be completing a virtual work experience if they organise it themselves, and a company only wants to do a virtual one. So I had some students last year who were working, for example, with a marketing company. It was all done online, and of course we're aware that the hybrid way of working is part of the workplace now, the world of work. If they can't secure anything, then they will complete a SpringPod virtual work experience program. So SpringPod is an organisation that run work experience on-rolling ongoing programs which they can dip into and pick and choose their timings. So I was so proud of them last year. They organised this all themselves with your help as parents and friends and neighbours. And out of a cohort of 197, there were 45 who did not secure in-person work experience. The students were incredible last year. They absolutely went for it. They saw the value of this. And because we do it through the work experience platform that Unifrog have, we actually managed to start to build some links. So this was launched 2 years ago, post-COVID, and we piloted it, the process for Unifrog last year, and it's been an absolute roaring success. And in fact, it's going out across all our Nova schools because of that. I think the first misconception is that students think work experience has to be, oh, I need to know what job I want to do. I've got to go in. I want to be an accountant. I've got to be in an accountancy office. I want to be a solicitor. I've got to go into a law firm. I want to be a doctor. I've got to go into a GP or a hospital, etc. The reality is that they need experience of work. That's a subtle play on words, really. Experience of working rather than studying, whether it is a different working with adults, whether it is a different day structure to their day. If they happen to know and they can secure a placement in a career field they're interested in, great, but that is not the be all and end all. Basically, you have the opportunity to have 3 days where they can really build some skills, behaviours that are connected to the world of work which employers are interested in. So students, I mean, and what I've done is I've managed to build contact with 70 companies locally that were so successful and pleased with MV students last year that they are willing to take on. And that goes all the way from graphic designers, to veterinary practices, to engineering firms, to accountancy firms. It doesn't cover every job that exists, that would be impossible, but within a driving distance of Melton or people's homes, obviously we take all the way going over the way towards Stamford and Uppingham, towards Leicester, students travelling from further north than Grantham, Newark area. So obviously some of these companies aren't just on our doorstep to the town, but what we've managed to do is pool now companies. So I will be putting them out, but I would highly recommend that between now and January, you start thinking about what contacts and networks you have. And this is where I also say, if you work for a company or have your own business and you would be willing to take somebody on for work experience, then I would love you to email me with an offer of what you may be able to offer. So for example, I had some parents last year whose daughter was not interested in engineering whatsoever, but they run an engineering firm and they took a student for a week and she went off and worked obviously somewhere completely different because it wasn't her. So it might be that your actual son and daughter isn't interested in the work that you do, but you could offer it to another young person. So it's very much about being exposed maybe to careers aspiration, but then building, like I say, those KSBs. So step 1, so there's a tool on that I will launch with students after Christmas. Step 1 is to find a provider who is actually happy with those dates in June. If they can only make 1 or 2 of those 3 days, then they can actually come into MV for the other day and do something virtually and do something through the SpringPod platform, which I will organise. You can use the MV database if you feel you need some support. There will be a first come, first serve when I put out the contact details, when I put out that database. Then the student, not the parent, then the student, because we want them to be as independent as possible, goes onto their Unifrog account and completes the form. At that stage, they need the contact details of the provider. That is it. Then the parent gets an automated email at the same time as the employer, and you have to fill out and approve that you're happy with that. and the employer then has to meet some health and safety requirements, some insurance liability requirements for us, maybe some safeguarding DSB if it's a school, if it's working in that kind of environment. And then we do a checking system that the paperwork is in place and we approve it. Now that's quite a task for us on the admin side. So we launch it in January and need it all completed by the Easter holidays. That gives us enough time for any last minute ones that need approving. And that is an absolute firm deadline. So the thinking really has to happen now, and I will talk to students about that, but then January is when the doing actually happens. What I'll also say is that the way our timetable works at MV, I know some students don't have blocks of time when they don't have lessons. So for example, there's some time on Thursdays, or they might have the whole of an afternoon off or the whole of the morning. If they wanted to set up a regular weekly work experience, let's say, for example, they are interested in teaching, or they are interested in vet med and they want to try and get a weekly, I'm just using those as examples, it could be anything, but if they want to get a weekly work experience or once every 2 weeks, they can apply through the placement tool on Unifrog straight away and set that up as soon as they like. I've already had one parent say to me that they'd like to go to their local primary school, they're interested in teaching, that they've got a contact there, they'd be willing to take them. And actually, there's no doubt about it, having a regular short exposure to a career you are interested in, especially if it is a vocational route, is definitely going to be beneficial. But any questions, I'll put my email out at the end. Any questions, I'm more than happy to be replying tomorrow to those. And just quickly about SpringPod, really. Again, it's an organisation that we are partnered with at MV, and they have on-demand virtual work experience. So you could literally log on. We're going to give them an account after Christmas. You could log on and do one in their own time now, or from January onwards. But if they can't secure an in-person work experience for those 3 days, then that is what they'll be doing, and it is still a really good opportunity. I then say those that were in person should do a SpringPod as well. There's also an organisation called Speakers for Schools, and they have some online virtual work experience opportunities as well. And actually, some of the Speakers for Schools ones then did offer some paid ones this summer, and I had a student get a paid work experience, and one of the criteria was you had to be interested in Minecraft. So that was quite interesting. It was like a software engineering exposure work experience, and got actually paid for a week. SpringPod isn't just work experience, it's also got a search engine, it's got careers advice, and it's got some degree taster courses on as well. So once they get that account, it's quite nice to have an explore. Unfortunately, there isn't a parent version of that, but you can certainly ask them to show you. Okay, I'm whipping through this now. We'll get to the summer term. They'll go on work experience. We will also run another day off timetable on that Friday, so it all fits on the same week, where they're going to do a careers workshop, and we'll start a very early prep for UCAS. All the tutorial programme will be focusing on their post-18 plans at that point. Their tutors will start monitoring their Unifrog accounts really closely. We're going to have all of our MV alumni come back for our annual event that we had. We had about 60 students come back last summer, and that's a big careers affair and workshops with them. And we will train them up for their LinkedIn profile. They will start their UCAS applications with their Hub account. And you'll notice my last bullet point there, summer holidays when you're in year 12 aren't just about going away. It might be that it's work experience, unpaid or part-time work, but really a case of making sure that what they do is enhancing their CV in that summer, as well as obviously having a break. And also we encourage, that's when the uni days will open, so they might want to start booking onto some of those, but certainly that will be a summer holiday and into this term as well. Going really quickly now, once they are in year 13, we are taking them through the application process. Excuse me. Just have a little sip of water. And that is the UCAS timeline. I will do a parent information evening about that. I'll do that as soon as we start in the autumn term, so that'll be September. They all get a personal referee which supports them. Any of those early apps go in quickly. They're done sort of as soon as we get back, sent off by the 15th of October. The rest of the end of January, if they stick to that date that they have done over the last couple of years. Some students will start having interviews for the actual degree apprenticeship. Some of those are really early. And they'll all be having careers meetings. That's on offer. So I'd like to think by Christmas, most year 13s have had a careers meeting, because they'll be year 13s by then. And then, I know it seems like I'm whipping their time away, but then there'll be lots of support for apprenticeship students at that point, because that's when it gets really busy. They'll start getting their university offers. I'll explain at another time what UCAS Extra is and all those sorts of things. I'll be doing a parents' evening to explain how university finance works. There's then a case of lots of focus on interviewing. They have to make their decision which university they want to firm. You get a first and second choice with universities. You can apply for 5, but you then narrow it down to 2. That's called your firm and insurance. That has to be done May, June time. And then sometimes the unis, this is quite a new thing, they then offer another day where you can go back once you've secured your place, and you get like a kind of induction day. They're called applicant days. Then they do their exams. Scary. You have to fill in the student finance by the end of May. They'll be booking their accommodation for going to university. The applications for apprenticeships are still coming in and still getting secured. LEBC do an amazing CV sharing service for people who haven't secured jobs. Their CVs will go out to companies across Leicestershire and the East Midlands. And that's it. Their MV days are coming to an end. They get their results. They go off to uni. They might get additional support as a gap year student. And that should say until September 26 for them. And they can keep accessing Unifrog, etc., etc. So those last few slides are purposely done quickly because I wanted the focus to really be on the start of the careers programme. And look at that for timing. So I am more than willing to answer any questions whatsoever. I'm happy for people to put mics on if they wish. We can do the raise the hand system. I will stop sharing my slides. If I can just remember how to do that. It's a while since I've done these team meetings. I think we used to do them all the time. And happy to answer any questions, or you might think, my goodness, ready to log off, and feel free to leave the meeting. So my email address is n for Natasha, n Roberts, NROBERTS at m for Melton, v for Vale, 16.org.uk. All our emails end the same, so I will put my email address in the chat. That would make sense, wouldn't it? And I am very aware that that is an awful lot of information, and I am very conscious that it could be overload, but those slides are going to be sent out to you, and also there will be a recording of this meeting. So I am going to stop the recording now so that your questions aren't recorded, but you are more than welcome to go and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you for listening.